Hey, what is up, traders, and welcome back to the live stream today for June 23rd. As you guys know, we are trading the overall equity markets, and we are trading here the names of Circle, NVIDIA, and looking to trade here Palantir due to the fact that they've been pretty strong over the past couple of weeks, and we have been looking to continue the momentum here towards the upside. So overall, the market did open a little bit lower during the pre-market due to the fact that we did have that overall increased volatility due to the fact that the U.S. has striked the Iranian nuclear facilities, kind of prompting a little bit more for that indecision and what the overall repercussions may come in for the U.S. The investor sentiment has been pretty, I'd say, less hectic, although there is that caution overall. So why not let's run over the overall rundown of how the market has been reacting and the overall news that may impact here the overall market. So let's pull up the overall newsletter, absolutely free. If you guys sign up, absolutely free. You guys get this every day before the market opens right here. So we have the trade rundown right for June 23rd, which is today. And like I said, the markets opened a little bit cautious after the U.S. bombing of Iran, right? So we still had to factor in a little bit of economic data. So for this example, we had, I guess, existing home sales, which is not really too important for the market, doesn't really factor it in. But for the sectors like real estate, like XLRE, one of the S&P ETFs, it does show very important confluence. So we would like to primarily look at how the overall real estate sector reacted to this number that came in. But yeah, overall the market is in a way pretty cautious, but we also have to factor in the important numbers that we're going to be getting here over the next couple of days here for this week. So looking at the overall expected numbers that are come in here, for example, here we have existing home sales that came in. So it actually came in higher than the forecast, which is, I guess pretty bullish here for real estate. And, hopefully if we do see that Fed cut, it'll also help prompt up that number. And as well, pretty much that's the only important numbers that came in today. For tomorrow, Tuesday, we'll be looking very important here on the Fed Chair Powell testimony, which will kind of let us know a little bit more on the insights as to why he didn't cut rates or how he views the overall conflict here with Iran and Israel, and how it may impact the overall decision of rate cuts, right? So as we know, Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, and what that means is that overall it will lead to higher prices in overall oil, which would induce to higher prices and higher inflation, thus reducing the likelihood of a rate cut over the expected year. As you know, there's still being 2 rate cuts being factored in here on the overall market, and participants are still pretty confident that we'll get at least 1 rate cut before the end of the year, right before the year ends. Now looking now for Wednesday, we have the 30-year mortgage rate, which pretty important for real estate. But something I really want to factor in is all the way to Thursday, right, which is where we get the most important number I believe this week. Is going to be GDP growth rate, the final number for the quarter-over-quarter change. So as we know, we previously got a overall GDP contraction, right? So as we know, generally 2 consecutive quarters of GDP contraction or GDP coming in a little bit negative shows that we are entering a recession, right? And generally during this time, we want to really factor in this number because it's showing pretty much a little bit of the impact that the tariffs may have had on the overall economy growth over the quarter. And we also got to factor that in, right? It's obvious that we've been seeing a little bit of a slowdown here in the economy due to the fact that we've seen retail sales month over month declining as well, and year over year. So it's kind of showing of that cool down as well within the consumer, right? So it's a really important number that we have to see as well. And also the jobless claims are going to come in, right? We have to see how the overall labor market is kind of performing here with these tariff threats, right? So I'd say but the most important number this week is going to be that GDP growth rate final after it's being revised. The forecast is coming in at negative growth at negative 0.2. The previous was 2.4%, but we're seeing that a little bit of a slowdown. So we'll be very heavily looking at that number here on Thursday overall. So now going back to the overall economic and overall rundown here, the market surprisingly opened pretty flat. After the tensions have been flaring again following the U.S. military action in the Middle East, right? So despite the cautious sentiment, like I said, investors have remained active, especially in high growth sectors like digital assets, right? So we're seeing, Circle going up and, Coinbase here. Right, over the weekend, President Trump confirmed that the U.S. did launch strikes against Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities over the weekend, and he warned that more could follow if Iran refuses peace negotiations. Iran, in response, is reportedly considering retaliation via a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which would lead to higher oil prices and possibly higher inflation, right? So it's very important to look out for that. And overall, on the commodities, Brent crude was above $77, a little bit of a 4% increase, pretty heavy increase there. And gold also increased, as it's being seen as, a little bit of a safe haven asset, right? So the demand has increased there to, kind of deter the risk here of geopolitics, right? So now the trade of the day is Circle, because this name hasn't been impacted too heavily by tariffs or any of these market uncertainties at all, or any geopolitical. The market has really been bidding this name up. It's been outstanding, honestly, and it opened at 240 today, and now it's up at 290. Like look at that. Like, what? It's up $50, really, right? So the stock jumped nearly 80% last week. Just last week, 80%. I cannot imagine the options on this thing, probably really expensive. And yeah, pretty much on a wave of positive momentum in the stablecoin sector, and as regulatory progress has been taking place here in Washington, right? So some supporting news that we factored in for the trade of the day is that the Senate passed the Genius Act, right, boosting the stablecoin innovation, and as well, Coinbase has announced multiple collaborations with stablecoin platforms, and ARK has sold around $100 million worth of Circle shares after the rally, which I don't really factor that in too much, but pretty nice to see that, funds and maybe starting to take a little bit of profit here, right? So overall, the post IPO hype is remaining strong, and institutional flows combined with policy clarity could continue to drive the upside here on coin, and as well here for overall Circle. And we've been seeing nothing but upside here, right? An absolutely bullish name there on Circle. So overall, though, the outlook is looking pretty cautious. The market is, in a way, kind of, digesting the news, just kind of awaiting here what the repercussions are, and maybe Iran's possible retaliation against the U.S. for these attacks. We'll have to see a little bit more during this week how the market takes that into consideration, and if Iran does retaliate against the U.S., we'll probably see that reflected here on the overall stock market, and we'll probably see a bid in gold. So let's see that right now. Going on to the overall market, the triple Q opened up pretty strong. We actually saw a nice bid here after 5 minutes after the open, right? And we're currently above the 50 MA, and I'm possibly looking to see some support here because there's some area of confluence, right? And what I mean by that is that the VWAP intraday is matching the 50 and this pivot point. So that's three levels that are matching and coming in close contact. So this area here is looking like a nice area from where the market may bounce here. Overall, we may see that bid, and let's say we are seeing it right now. We're seeing, some buyers coming in, picking up the price here. Possibly, I'd see the market rally towards, 532 if there's, increased bullishness, right? We can go up to there for today. If not, we'll probably just, see that bid and we'll probably stagnate, right? Remain flat throughout the whole day, right? There's still that uncertainty here within investors, right? Which, they don't want to bid up, or even sellers come in and emerge. But it's looking like a strong area here where the market will find some possible support and pretty much, that demand. Going over to the Max 7 here, so we have Apple on the day. It's been pretty weak. Open pretty strong on the day, but now reversed that move completely. If this level breaks, then all hell is gonna break loose pretty much. A lot of people would have their stop losses here at this level, and if they break, then we'd see a mass liquidation here. We'd see like a candle towards here. Possibly Apple will pull back towards this level. If it doesn't find support, then the next area of support will be possibly towards here, this level here of 198. And that break of the 200 here, and the 50 MA just doesn't really sit right here. We're supposed to find buyers here, but looks like we're not. Well, let's see a little bit more if that level does decide to break. And yeah, relatively Apple has been one of the weakest of the Max 7 here, not just on the day here but year to date, right? If we pull up, for example, the daily chart, it's been nothing but underperforming, right? We've been seeing no upside. It's hasn't found a bid, compared to, for example, Microsoft, right? It's below still its swing high anchored VWAP, right? This green line here, and it's still below the 50 MA, this yellow line, as you guys can see, right? We haven't bid up. We're not even close to the all-time highs because the investor sentiment is kind of hurt, a little bit indecisive here because Apple has been seen as being behind in the AI race, right? They had that WWDC conference, and investors were kind of hoping to see something better, right? A little bit more, something innovative here on part of Apple. But as we know, Apple isn't really the leader of innovation. They're mostly they see something, they see an innovation, they pretty much tailor it, and they always come out with the best, right? That's how it's been most likely, right? They weren't the first to create the overall mobile phone. We all know that, right? But they ended up tweaking it and gaining market share overall, right, compared to earlier versions, earlier companies like BlackBerry, right? Which right now the stock is just not compared to Apple, right? So going back towards the 5-minute chart, Apple, yeah, pretty weak. Now it broke below the 200, a key decisive level, and a lot of people are getting liquidated at this point. So we'll probably see some more selling here on Apple. Going now towards Microsoft, we're seeing, let's see, a very strong name here on Microsoft. So we're seeing very strong momentum. We are above the 50. We are also above the intraday VWAP. We actually came back, found support there. We bounced off quite nicely, showing that momentum. Yeah, it's quite strong on the daily as well. It's been nothing but upside. And we also can factor that in, right? Because it's been, pretty much of a leader here on, right, here on AI. And it's been innovative in a way. So we like to see this movement, this momentum, and still got more further upside if it decides to go up towards a resistance here of 481, around 60 cents. But kind of looking like it's kind of drying off, so we may be prone for a pullback towards a 50 MA here again. We may find some demand here at these lower levels. Let's look at NVIDIA, the leader here in AI. Pretty strong open. Now it's just kind of consolidating. It's remaining below the the pivot point here, so it's kind of flat. And it's also been going below and above the 50 MA, so relatively we can say that this name is flat, and it's probably not going to see explosive move, neither the upside or the downside. The only way we would see that break towards the downside, that explosive move, would be if we managed to fail this $143 level right here. Then that would propulse it maybe towards the day lows, which would also form confluence or match here with the overall S1 pivot point. We may find support, so we are seeing some resistance now, and the only way it could be long would be at a break here above this level right here. It would kind of propulse it towards maybe this area of resistance, 145, and we've seen 145 being a very difficult level for NVIDIA. It goes above it for some days, and then it opens below it for some days. So there's some heavy selling at 145. That they're not allowing the stock to get above 145, and we'll see a little bit more how it develops. But looks pretty flat right now. But although it's strong on the day, because we can see relatively it's above VWAP. But yeah, we'll see how it develops. Going on Google here, pretty weak. This name has been pretty weak. On Friday, had an intense downward move, and looks like we found that downward move again today. We found that resistance at the 50, and like I said, generally when we are trading below the 50 MA, so the 50 MA is here, we generally find that resistance at these areas here, and we reject, because generally we tend to give the benefit of the doubt here towards the sellers, because there's underlying sellers, right? Even if we see a bid, it's not going to be sustained because there is some supply here just waiting to add into it. And yeah, now pretty much just giving back its prior move here that it had. It's giving it all back, and possibly we'll find maybe some intermediate, maybe support here, maybe like a little bounce here at this level, but it's not looking too strong here on overall Google. Looking back now at Amazon, not bad. Kind of weak on the day, we can say that, because it's below the 50 MA. Kind of try to get above, but a lot of selling came in. We fell below. Not looking too good here. Let's see. If we zoom out, yeah, still looking pretty bearish. Yeah, on the day, yeah. I mean, it would propose more, add more selling if it does break below this TOA dollar level, which would be the most recent, you could say, relevant higher low. If it does break, then probably target the short towards the day's lows here of approximately 207.50 cents. Meta on the day is pretty strong. This name has been quite strong. It's between Microsoft and Meta. Those two names have been seen as leaders in AI, and they've also been seeing that within their earnings, right? They're also seeing that growth here. So for example, on Meta, we opened up pretty strong. We pulled back towards VWAP. We found some rejection though, short-term rejection at the 50 MA, but we found support at VWAP. Buyers came in and we bid up, strong candle, and at around 685, and we've been nothing but bid up there, so it's 6 points above that, and broke above this pivot point, so we should be looking bullish on this name above the 50. There's underlying buyers, right? They try to bring it down here, but they failed. So buyers are now fully in control, and we're also above the intraday VWAP, which is this blue line here. So very strong on Meta, very, very strong on the day. Tesla has been an absolute beast on the day. Absolutely, I can't believe I missed this trade. I was looking at Circle, also has been a beast, but this name on the day, it's been absolutely amazing. It's been above the 50 MA the whole time. We haven't even come close to seeing Tesla retrace towards a 50 at all. Well, we've been above VWAP. Kind of opened up here. Buyers came in at discount here below VWAP. They bid up the price, and we haven't even pulled back to VWAP at all. And we're finally seeing some resistance here at R5, which is a max. There's no other area. So I believe Tesla's pretty overextended. We may see a retracement towards the 346, where buyers may look to possibly enter the name again, find some demand here. We're seeing some supply here kind of slow down of price ever since 745, and now it's 845. So an hour here of consolidation, just so probably some profit taking, will probably let the price down, decline towards VWAP here 346, and probably that's where we find some buyers here on Tesla. But pretty strong, the strongest of the Max 7 so far. Looking now at AI and data infrastructure here, looking at Palantir, pretty strong on the day. Saw a nice bid, found some resistance at R1, kind of try to get above, but we had this candle kind of decline, and we pulled back towards VWAP. But a very nice area here of support. If we can manage to hold this area here, this 50, then and VWAP get above VWAP, hopefully like above a break of 140 and 37 cents. That break there, that would allow us to be having that confidence again in Palantir and seeing that momentum. But also on the day, Palantir is pretty strong, but on the daily, it's been an absolute beast as well. Looking at SMCI, pretty weak name here. Not really propulsing towards the upside at all. Finding see that curl towards the downside because we're below the 50. So we generally like to give the benefit of the doubt here towards the sellers. Pretty weak name here, so not looking too strong. AMD, it's been nothing but a mess. I was trading this name here, kind of getting a little bit of an insight here. Here we kind of had a little bit of a kind of like a practice trade here on this one. We try to enter here at this break towards upside, try to target a little bit of this movement here at 134, but we actually got stopped out at this low around there. So not bad. And also below the 50 MA, so it kind of rejected that prior area right there. So just signifying that overall weakness in the name. Looking at Cloudflare here, pretty weak on the day. Kind of fell below the VWAP and also the 50 MA. So pretty much some weakness overall. These names, yeah, pretty strong at the open though. Nice bid. Now just find some retracement there. Maybe some accumulation probably find some support within this area, this little range here of this 50 and the intraday VWAP. As long as we don't fall below this, then we should generally tend to give credence to the buyers and chart, and to the names here. AVGO been pretty rangy, pretty consolidative. It's trying to bid up, but it's been rangy since the beginning of the day. Since the open here. ASML, pretty strong name, eh? Found some nice support. Now it's finding that resistance at the R1, so we may find support at VWAP or maybe around this area here, this 768. We may find some buyers. So what I mean by this is probably find some support here at this area, right? Right there, support level. While the price actually kind of pull back and find some support, maybe catch some liquidity here and just propulse higher, right? And make those higher highs, higher lows, and propulse higher. That's what we would like to see around this area. Or if it does pull back towards VWAP, some type of similar price action like this, right here on AVGO or ASML. ASML on the 5-minute. On the daily, is kind of setting up, still below its swing high anchored VWAP, so it's not there for the swing yet, but we'll have to wait a little bit more. And finally, here is TSM, and same thing as NVIDIA. Strong bid on the day, but then it's been accumulating ever since then. So it's also been going up and below, kind of wicking in between the 50 EMA. So generally, we do like to say that this name is pretty rangy, and we generally don't like to get involved with these names overall because it's rangy. We like to get the trend here. So see on the triple Q, looks like we are seeing a little bit of support here. I like this candle that formed right here, this lower hammer candle, right? So what this basically means is that sellers brought the price down to 528, but buyers came in and bid up the price a little bit higher, and I'm really liking that. Probably see a break here, maybe this type of movement here like this, decisive break now above this area, above this kind of showing that it did bounce off of VWAP, right? So we have to see if that does occur. Let's see, going back, we zoom out to yesterday's, or Friday's price action. This was a high that was formed, this was a low, so we did find support at that low on the open. Didn't break that, so kind of was the area to go long there. And let's see, going here, the high was around that area here, failed to go higher. Area broke that support, kind of consolidating. Yeah, and the market's been having a very hard time getting or reaching the all-time highs, like I've said, right? With all this, with all the indecision and uncertainty that there's been currently in the markets with this conflict that we've been having, and it's a lot of uncertainty so far. Let's see, so we had this high of around 533, and we failed that again. Kind of approached that, and we sold off quite heavily the previous day. So just just looking at the overall patterns here of the market and what it's telling us here, right? So we failed that. We propulsed lower on that day because we failed the pre-market low. The previous low. Previous high was broken. There's act as a level of support there. Didn't even come close to that. Here. Right there, right there. Yeah, pretty interesting. We gotta factor in as well a little bit more of the EMAs here. So for example, using, see if you take volume off, I don't think we can do that. So if you add an EMA, right, in this case, for example, there's EMAs here. We add a shorter term EMA like a 9, then we can kind of gauge the shorter term, what it's doing with the longer term. So we put that as red, kind of signify that momentum So here we didn't have any crossovers at all. Saw strong upward momentum. We found resistance at the R1. Then we declined, and we saw a little bit of a crossover, kind of indecisiveness here at this area, and boom, crossed down below. Found a little bit of sellers. We didn't even get above VWAP. Kind of signifying the weakness that was present in the name right there. Yeah, generally a lot of indecision here, a lot of up and down, up and down, up and down. Let's see, so you can also include a bit of a longer, the 50 and the 200, a little bit of a longer, yeah, right there, the 200, pulled back there, found buyers, pulled back there, found buyers, and buyers, kind of fell below that. Really, the 200, we like to, kind of keep it as white, maybe a little bit of a increase, so we kind of detail it, kind of separate it, kind of notice it here. Let's see, the 50, we'll make it thicker right here. Okay, there we go. So looks like on the day we had that gold cross, kind of remained above it, a nice momentum on the name. Let's see, on the day we were kind of between these two EMAs, had that death cross, just propulsed lower on the triple Qs, and then the next day opened, and below that we declined. Right, so we should have been looking short on this day ever since we had that death cross that was formed here. Kind of gave the sentiment. If I take these off, kind of gave the sentiment for the next couple of days. So this was on Tuesday, June 17th here on the market, and kind of been having that. And right now what we're doing is we're kind of accumulating between. So we may have that gold cross, maybe kind of signifying a shift in the trend, a momentum shift. We have to see what that does for us, but overall it's been pretty rangy. The market hasn't been seeing that momentum push that we would like to see in the market here. So for example, we look here on the market, and see, we've been seeing a lot of deviations, man. It's not it's not been the best weeks to trade it, right? So looking at that, we're still above key areas, maybe that area, and find support. Looking at the 30, looking at the daily, yeah, I mean, still bullish as long as we're above the swing high anchored V1, but we are looking prone for a pullback. Yeah, on the 30, we're still, I mean, we had that gold cross here, but see how we're having such a hard time even getting above the 541. We're not even haven't even tested that level. Right, just showing a little bit of the weakness here that's present on the market. Right, we had nice moves, getting above from this low on April all the way, above to the heights. So from April to June, so 2 months, and for the past couple of ever since like May, the beginning of May towards now, pretty much the whole month we've just been, kind of trying to move higher, but with that indecision. Like this, So we go back to the 5-minute, a bit of that lower time frame, and we're seeing that as well. So we're seeing just that indecision being shown on the overall market. Also, help us would also be another EMA kind of gauging the strength here. So for example, using a 100 EMA, we'll put that right. So we've been kind of so far above it on the day, but if this does break, we would kind of go short, try to target the lows here on the overall market. Right here, let's see how Apple's doing then. So it's trying to find some support off that 200. Yeah, see, I'm telling you, the 200 does come in handy on those days where we have very intense downward move, right? So we see the stock, right, bid up on this day on Friday on Apple, we have a strong resistance at 200, which prompts us to pretty much decline, right? But we were declining at the same time that we were above the 50 MA, so this was a nice area where this could have been bought, right? Because the buyers were in control of the trend, right? Even though there was selling, it's like, we reverted towards the actual support level that we were supposed to see, like I said, at this area here of between the 50 EMA, right? Let's see if we can factor that in. Here, this 50 EMA right here, this little area right here, we reversed towards that, which caught us towards the mean right there, which is quite nice to see. And we got above, so you're kind of gauging that. And that was a nice area to buy here below VWAP, which could have been reading up on Friday. There it is towards the close. So it would have been a nice, pretty much $3 gain if you would have been held there. Entered here, stop loss at the low, right here at 196. See this momentum going towards the upside. This candle, you enter at the low here, boom, upside, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing now on Apple, but Apple's been weak on the day. Seen on Microsoft, we've been above these indicators. We were kind of below them for a little while, but now we're above it, which is quite nice to see. See how this looks on the 30-minute chart. Let's also make this a little bit thicker because we can't really see it. There we go, like that. Alright, let's see. Looking at the 30-minute chart of Microsoft and excluding the VWAP. There we go. So just seeing per price action alone, we've been see the 50 is above, right? So we have the price action, and below we have the 50, the 100, and 200, right? So generally it's been a very strong trend, right? It hasn't broken below. We haven't seen any death crosses, and obviously that's being reflected here on the overall longer term trend on the daily, right? So pretty much could have been writing this name ever since we had this cross above, signify that momentum, that upward momentum, right? So the long pretty much was if you wanted to swing trade this at 395, right? So we saw this nice here, this nice momentum, this nice curve price action, and it hasn't broken the price action below at all. We've had pullbacks towards here, this EMA 100. It's been holding quite strong. We had the wick again, it's been holding the 100. So kind of important to factor that in. I mean, comparing this to, let's say, NVIDIA, right? It's been finding, let's see, yeah, some pullbacks, but hasn't fallen below the 200, hasn't even crossed, right? So it just shows how intense the buyers have been. And we're also seeing this here at this cross right there. So uptrend on the daily, a 30-minute basically. Now we're seeing this death cross here on Google, right? So maybe you want to see a little bit more how this develops on the next following days, but Google is looking pretty bearish. And if we zoom out on the 30-minute and we zoom out on the daily, we kind of failed to break above here, and right now we're kind of declining. So these levels may be targeted on the longer term. 147, a little bit of a swing trade here on the names. And look, we've been, wow, very strong downtrend. As we found resistance at the 50, right? Seeing nothing but downtrend. If you look at the 5, seeing this during this time, we were seeing just wick. We were kind of in a range, right? And you can definitely see that with the EMAs being very close together. But once that kind of rubber band broke, right, we were kind of like this, pinching below. We were kind of like that. Once it broke and we saw that expansion here of price right here on this day, on Wednesday, pretty much that's what we saw, the decline, right? Heavy decline on Friday, really heavy, right? So it kind of allows us to see the overall extent of the downward move, right? So now, for example, AMD has been pretty weak. Hasn't crossed below at all, but this was a very strong momentum here on the 5 here. And now what it's doing is it's between these, right? Price action is between these EMAs, Let me see if I can kind of see this. So it's been between these EMAs right now, and that's signifying that it's been weak on the day, but there's indecision overall. That kind of shows us what the buyers are doing. They're not really too present in the name, and that's why we're seeing that decline pretty heavy on AMD. So possibly we may see some support around this area. We'll have to see what it does here, but pretty weak, pretty overextended. See, it kind of hugs the price action here. Kind of hugs it. That's what it's been doing. Let's see if I take the VWAP off. Right, generally the decline towards fine support there. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Decline, find support there. Decline, find support there. Let's see. This was today, right? Monday, okay. Monday. See, now we had that decline, right? Pretty heavy on the day. That was a little double top there. Double top of price action. 133 resistance. Let's break below. Yeah, a little bit of a double top there. Let's see how Bitcoin is doing. Bitcoin USD. Yeah, falling quite heavy. Now it's at 101. Yeah, on the daily, looks like we're having some trouble holding the 50 EMA. Although we're kind of having that deeper pullback. Actually, we fell towards 99,000. Actually, quite interesting to see that 99,000 deeper correction. I mean, yeah, we're having trouble getting above the 50 EMA, so it's kind of a little bit of a warning sign. You may find now some accumulation at this area because we're going to be between these EMAs, the 50, the 200, the 100 and 200. So it's kind of seeing now some profit taking, I guess, right? And Bitcoin's been having a very hard time getting above 109, right? So it's kind of been within a range here overall. Bitcoin and Ethereum, we didn't even talk about that. Didn't even set up. If Bitcoin didn't set up, which is a leader, then Ethereum wouldn't set up either. So let's see that. It's looking at let's see AMD. Thought we could have found some support around here, but we didn't. Right, quite interesting to see that pattern. Can we compare this to Palantir? Yeah, we may find support here. We may find a bounce, confluence here at this pivot point and EMAs, this area. We may find some buying. Right, I compare this to TSLA. Like, look at that 50 EMA is above. It's like a fan, right? 50, the price action. Yeah, the 50, the 100, and 200. Very strong trend here on Tesla. And during these days, you see we were in a pretty much consolidative zone, right? Not really too major, really consolidative. Kind of give it time around 835. Here we saw this downward move, so that kind of prompted the sell. Right there on Tesla. Let's see, on this day it kind of failed. Yeah. Yeah, this name has been pretty strong, very, very strong on the day. Let's see, for example, let's look at Google, right? Pretty weak. It's been P the whole time, so we've been looking to short this name. Yep. Let's see, Amazon, it's below pivot point. It's been shorted quite well. Now we're finding some, finding a little bit of we're declining here on the overall market. It's like we're failing that level. See if we can zoom out here on a 30-minute. Yeah, we've been seeing nothing but rejection of those EMAs here. But since we're between these EMAs, there's been that intense consolidation, right? Compared to the days when we were above them, right, quite decisively. That's when we saw the major moves here. For example, June 2nd, right? That's when we saw major moves towards the upside. But now that we are between them, it kind of signifying that the trend is accumulating, and we have been seeing that range. We haven't been seeing intense upward momentum at all on the name, and it just kind of gives a show here what the market is signifying to us here. Yeah, market's pretty rangy. Let's see what it does. Yeah, but other than that, we'll leave it at that. So as always, if you like this live stream, feel free to subscribe to the channel and also to the Uplift Markets newsletter. As always, stay uplifted and don't let the markets whip you guys out. And also be very on watch for the video that we're going to be uploading today at 1 p.m. Which will be very interesting, and hopefully you guys enjoy the video. So yeah, apart from that, we'll see you guys on the next live stream. And other than that, let's see.